There is a moment that happens at every Buckingham Palace garden party, just after the gates open and the 8,000 guests begin to fan out across one of the most beautiful private gardens in the world. The band plays, the afternoon light catches the roses, and then someone spots the royal family emerging across the lawn, and a quiet ripple moves through the crowd. On the afternoon of May 8th, 2026, that ripple had an extra quality to it, because what people saw as Catherine, Princess of Wales, stepped out alongside Prince William to host their second ever garden party as a couple was not simply an elegant woman in a beautiful dress. What they saw was something more layered than that, something that took a moment to fully register. She was wearing the earrings. Not just any earrings, not a new piece from a favorite jeweler, but a pair of Bahrain pearl drop earrings, delicate and shimmering, that have hung from the ears of some of the most remarkable women in the history of this monarchy. Earrings with a story that begins at a wedding in 1947 and travels through grief and ceremony and the quiet passing of precious things between women who love each other, all the way to a garden party lawn in May 2026. And if you know the history of those earrings, and this is the part that makes this moment genuinely moving rather than simply beautiful, then what you saw on Catherine's ears that afternoon was not jewelry at all. It was a message. Let's start at the very beginning of this story, because the beginning matters enormously. In 1947, a young Princess Elizabeth was preparing to marry Prince Philip Mountbatten. The world was still healing from the Second World War, Britain was still in the grip of rationing, and yet, from all corners of the world, wedding gifts were arriving for the young princess who would one day become the most recognizable woman on earth. Among those gifts was something extraordinary. The Hakim of Bahrain sent 7 perfectly matched pearls presented in a shell. They were, by any measure, one of the most beautiful wedding gifts Elizabeth received, and rather than simply adding them to the royal collection as decorative objects, Elizabeth did something personally meaningful. She had them crafted into earrings, round diamond studs at the top, elegant wiguette-cut diamonds in an Art Deco style, and then at the base of each earring, one of the Bahrain pearls, perfectly positioned, catching the light with every movement. She wore them frequently in the early years of her marriage. They appear in photographs from the 1950s, those early decades when Elizabeth was still finding her way as both a queen and a young woman navigating the enormous weight of what her life had become. The pearls in those photographs have a kind of quiet confidence to them, as though they understood, even then, what they would eventually mean. And then, in 1982, something important happened. Queen Elizabeth loaned the earrings to Diana. That word loaned is worth pausing on. The royal collection is not simply a jewelry box. It is a living archive of relationships and meaning. When Elizabeth lent something to Diana, it was not a casual gesture. It was an act of welcome, an act of trust, a quiet statement that said, "You belong here now, and here is something of mine to carry with you." Diana wore the Bahrain pearls with her characteristic grace. They suited her in the way that things suited Diana, not because she was performing elegance, but because she genuinely inhabited it. And royal watchers who have studied the photographs from that period note that Diana returned to those earrings more than once. They meant something to her. When Diana died in August 1997, the earrings passed back through the family. They appeared on different royal shoulders at different moments over the years that followed. The Duchess of Edinburgh wore them to a Royal Albert Hall performance in 2012. Queen Elizabeth herself continued to wear them at remembrance services and formal occasions, the pearls appearing again and again in the public record of her long and extraordinary life. And then, in 2016, something shifted. Catherine began wearing them, not at a glamorous premiere or a fashion event, but at the kinds of occasions that carry genuine weight: remembrance services, Commonwealth Day services, moments where the choice of what to wear on your body carries a meaning beyond the fabric and the stone. The first time many people noticed the Bahrain earrings on Catherine was at Queen Elizabeth's state funeral in September 2022, where she paired them with a Japanese pearl choker from the late Queen's collection and stood in the rain outside Westminster Abbey, looking like the very embodiment of quiet, contained grief.
It was after that funeral, according to reports, that the earrings were entrusted to Catherine more formally, not borrowed for an occasion, but given into her keeping, a baton passed, as so many things were passed in those strange and sorrowful weeks after Elizabeth's death, to the woman who would one day be queen. Since then, Catherine has worn them with increasing frequency and, you sense, with increasing intention, at the Commonwealth Day service in March 2026, at Easter Sunday at St. George's Chapel in April, and now on May 8th at Buckingham Palace at a garden party that marked the second of the 2026 season and the only second that Catherine and William have ever hosted together as a couple. That last detail is worth holding in your mind because it connects to something in Catherine's own story that makes this particular occasion far more resonant than a routine royal engagement. In 2024, Catherine did not attend any garden parties. She did not host any. She was not at Buckingham Palace in a hat and heels greeting members of the public on the lawn. She was at home, in Kensington Palace, working through chemotherapy for a cancer diagnosis that had shocked the nation when it was announced in March of that year. She missed an entire season, an entire summer of public life, and the people who were there, who attended the 2024 garden parties and looked across the lawn expecting to see her, felt her absence as something more than the absence of a princess at a formal event. They felt it the way you feel the absence of someone specific, someone whose presence has come to mean something to you personally. And then came 2025, her first season back, careful, steady, rebuilding, one garden party attended rather than hosted, a return that felt like a first step than a triumphant comeback, because Catherine, who has never been interested in triumphant comebacks, was not performing recovery, she was simply returning to the work she loves, at the pace her body allowed. And now, 2026, the second garden party she has hosted as Princess of Wales, wearing her cream self-portrait separates, the tailored three-quarter-sleeved jacket with its black buttons, the swishy polka dot skirt, the vintage hat wrapped in black tulle, and those earrings, the Bahrain earrings, worn for the third time this year alone, worn on an afternoon when 8,000 people gathered in the Buckingham Palace gardens to be recognized for their contribution to their communities, and when a princess who spent a year fighting for her own health stood among them, smiling, listening, present. There's a thread running through all of this that I think is worth naming directly, because it's easy to look at jewelry choices as a kind of royal fashion commentary, which stone, which setting, whose taste, and miss what is actually being said. Catherine is telling a story with these earrings, and the story is this. We are in a period of genuine transition for this monarchy. King Charles, who is managing his own serious illness while carrying the responsibilities of the crown, is doing something that no amount of institutional preparation can fully prepare you for. He is being a king while being a patient, and the people around him, William, Catherine, the senior working royals, are holding the fabric of the institution together in ways that are rarely dramatic and rarely noticed. Catherine's repeated choice to wear Elizabeth's jewelry throughout 2026 is not simply sentimental, it is architectural. She is building something, quietly, carefully, in the way she does everything, not through grand statements, but through accumulated, consistent, deliberate choices. She wore Elizabeth's layered pearl necklace at the reception marking what would have been the late Queen's 100th birthday on April 21. She wore the Bahrain earrings at Commonwealth Day, at Easter, and now at this garden party. She is threading the past through the present in a way that says, the line holds, the tradition continues. The women who came before are not forgotten. They are here, in the jewels we carry, in the hands we shake, in the work we show up for. And for the 8,000 people who stood on that lawn on May 8th, many of whom have followed this family for decades, who remember Elizabeth, who remember Diana, who watched Catherine's cancer diagnosis with a kind of personal dread, the sight of those Bahrain pearls catching the afternoon light would have meant something that no press release could have conveyed. She came back, she is still here, and she is wearing the earrings. One final detail that deserves a moment of attention. On May 13th, just 5 days after this garden party, Catherine will travel to Reggio Emilia in Italy. It will be her first solo international trip since her cancer treatment. She is visiting to research early childhood development programs, work connected to her long-standing commitment to understanding the formative years of a child's life and what shapes them. It's serious work, important work, the kind of work that gets less attention than a garden party but matters more. She will certainly, when the photographs emerge from that Italian visit, be wearing something beautiful, something chosen with care, and there is every possibility that among her choices, a familiar pearl will appear. Because this is how Catherine communicates, not in press releases or interviews or carefully managed revelations, but in the quiet, continuous, accumulated language of objects and presence and showing up, of wearing a wedding gift from 1947 to a garden party in 2026 and letting the 80 years of history between those two moments speak for themselves. 3 women. 3 generations, 1 pair of earrings catching the light across almost 80 years of a monarchy finding its way through the impossible and the ordinary, through grief and illness and duty and joy, and somehow still carrying on. What does it mean to you when you see Catherine wearing Queen Elizabeth's jewelry at moments like this? We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if you would like to stay with this story as the royal year unfolds, please do subscribe. There is always more to talk about.